Assalamu alaikum and welcome to a new Suhoor bite. It is by now day 3, day 4 of Ramadan. I don't know what day it is. Things go fast. I have a new guest with me today for a new Suhoor bite. We have Noura Beiruti, a game developer. Noura,
Salam Rami.
I'm so glad to have you here. You're a game developer, sort of new to the industry, not new to making games, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've been working on a few personal projects for a while, mainly with my club at the university, but I'm starting to make my foray into the industry, working with some companies and potentially maybe putting out games soon, although I'm not quite there yet. There's still a
Right.
lot of dev work to be done.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is a lot of work. Personal games. Any projects that you care to mention?
Um, nothing that's out right now. I mean, like I have an itch.io page, but it's like all of the stuff that I started working, like my first game ever and things like that. Which
What
people are free to play, honestly, but I don't think they'll see anything majorly impressive yet.
what was your first game?
It was an RPG called Sticks and Stones. The idea was it was supposed to be like this morally ambiguous explorative game that was supposed to make the player really think about their choices. And so during the day, you would talk to all of these NPCs, and it's like a regular day. It's set during the college era. Go figure.
Hmm.
And then at night, you would enter this dream world where you would face the same issues and the same people that you faced during the day, except now they all look like monsters, manifestations of mental illness that you as a player character have.
Mm.
Um,
So you went pretty hardcore on your first game.
yeah, yeah. The execution was a little iffy, considering it was my first game and I didn't know what scope was. Um, I'm reworking it right now because now I know a little more about systems design. I know a little more about nailing down the core game loop and things like that. And I was working with a team of students at the time, and they all put in a lot of really hard work, and I didn't enjoy feeling like that went to waste because I couldn't deliver on
Right.
the scope. So I'm
Right.
reworking some of the systems just to hopefully put their work in a better light when I re-upload it to itch.
Amazing. Yeah. No, I remember my first game. My first bigger game had like 16-player multiplayer and like real water physics, and this was like 1998, so that also never happened because I didn't know how to do it. But it's good to dream big, and I always feel like those first projects, they either become something that you can work towards, or they become something that you can look back on and then go, eh.
Yeah, actually,
The idea was good.
it's really cool. Cool thing about that is I was recently at the Game Developers Conference, and
Hmm.
there was this indie salon event that was like one of those spin-off events that's not officially GDC, but a lot of people from GDC will go to. And I
Right.
had the opportunity to give like a 10-minute talk, um, where a lot of people would plug their games, but I spent the time talking about like don't run from your past. It took me 2 years to go back and confront this first game that I ever made, but this is how much I've learned from it, and that's really reassuring. Just that
Right.
progress.
And it's nice because you'll have the opportunity to keep, reassessing yourself against it for very long. I still do it with my first game, where I'm like, wow, I've come really far. But I now also do it with Super Crate Box, which was my first commercial game. And it's just good to keep reevaluating where you are, because otherwise you lose that sense of momentum and gratefulness, if everything just
Yeah,
feels natural.
absolutely. Yeah, it's also you get to a point if you're not looking back at your past projects, you get to a point where you get scared to look at anything that you have stopped working on just from that sheer that feeling of dread of oh
Right.
God, I worked on this so long ago. What is it?
Right.
How bad is it gonna be when I open these code files again?
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, speaking of looking at the past, I understand that that you moved to the United States a while ago.
Yeah, so this is my coming up on the end of 3 years now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And before there, where were you? Just sort of all over the region, or?
So most of the time I was in Saudi Arabia. I was living with
Right.
my family because I came to the US to study, and we spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia, a little bit of time in Dubai, a
Hmm.
little bit of time in London, but that was when I was really young, so I don't remember that very
Right.
much.
Yeah. Just sort of hopping around.
Yeah.
That sounds like a story. And you've been in the U.S. now. How's that been?
Honestly, I like it. It's not bad, but it's definitely very, very different to the Middle East. There was a huge culture shock when I first got here, and in some cases, I'm still getting over that culture shock whenever something I haven't dealt with before comes up.
Right.
Yeah, Ramadan
What?
is one of those things.
Yeah, I was about to say it must be very interesting. I mean, how do you remember your first Ramadan there, or any notable like things you noticed?
So, one thing that I noticed that isn't specific to Ramadan that I noticed around that time was there are very few people who will be interested in learning things if they don't have a personal stake in it.
Hmm.
So, like, I would say things like, yeah, I'm fasting, I can't do this, so on and so forth. And then, people would never ask more about it. And that used to bother me. But then I realized I can't really blame people for that. Um, So this year, one thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to get my friends a little more involved so that they can maybe learn a little bit more about Ramadan and about like what it means to me because it's very personal. I love this time of year.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, I sent them. You made a thread of tweets about what Ramadan is for non-Muslims. I sent them that as a reference. They all found it very
Oh,
useful.
yeah. It's one of those threats that I learn to write better and better every year as I do it, because you just realize that a lot of terminology, like we have a lot of jargon in Islam. You know, you go like, yeah, so we fast from suhoor, which is at fajr, until iftar, which is at maghrib, and people are just looking at you like, what are these words? So you get better at sort of like, explaining halal and explaining Eid and explaining Ramadan and the pillars and all of that. So I'm glad it's useful. It's taken half a decade to get it right. So
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's very cool that you put out resources like this just to help not only the Muslim community but other people as well.
yeah, I mean, it's a I got fortunate that I have this platform, right? But it's in the end, everybody is pushing a little bit towards just understanding. Like, tell me about how that's going with your friends. Like,
So past like the first year that I was here, we didn't really do much. It was also hard to do things because at the time I was still figuring out how to buy groceries for myself in an appropriate amount. Um, but last year I started getting a little more involved with it. So I would invite people over for iftar. Um, if anybody happened to be awake in the wee hours of the morning, maybe we'd like have a little bit of a chat. Um,
right.
and my friends have been very supportive. I really appreciate that. Like I mentioned, a lot of my friends are non-Muslim, so seeing them being open-minded and some of them wanting to learn more when they see that this is something that means a lot to me is very encouraging. One of my friends, she, oh man, I love her. She sat and listened to me talk like about my entire life story regarding Ramadan and the family memories that I have and the great feeling of those communal meals and staying
Hmm.
up. And when I was younger, my dad would tell me me and my siblings, he would get us all together before Fajr, and he would tell us stories from the Quran, in a way that children could understand, because the Quran
Right.
is quite difficult. I still think that to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complex text, right?
Yeah. And so she listened to all of these things, and she liked. There was one thing she latched onto that I didn't expect, and it was the Ramadan tablecloth. So
Right. Yeah.
in my family, we don't usually go all out with decorations or things like that, but we do like to have some visual indication that it's Ramadan. It makes the home feel a little homier.
Yeah.
And one of these things is we have a red tablecloth with like crescent moon patterns on it in blue and green, like like
Mhm.
a Ramadan tablecloth that you
Yeah.
buy.
Yeah, exactly.
And we would just put it out, and that's where we would put the food for iftar. And I mentioned this thinking like, oh, this is such a tiny detail in the whole story. And like a week or week and a half later, this friend, she comes back and she gives me a bag, and I I don't really know what this. She and I are kind of doing this thing called gift fair, where it's like warfare but gifts.
Right.
We will just buy each other things until one of us gives up.
Right.
And so she had given me that as part of it, and I didn't know what it was. I open it, and it is a red tablecloth.
Right.
Not at all the same shade of red, no crescent moons, no Ramadan pattern on it, but it was a
But
red tablecloth, and just that attention to detail and like the intention, because she got it for me specifically saying like,
right.
I hope this brings back a piece of home for you while you're here.
Yeah,
It was
that's
the
so
sweetest
lovely.
thing.
It is a Ramadan tablecloth, moons or not, right?
Exactly. I bring it out
It is
specifically for iftar.
amazing. Noura, thank you so much for sharing this story. That's super wonderful. Is there anywhere where people, if they want to follow you, where they can follow you online, Twitter, I don't know, wherever you are online?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter, at Kicker Kitten. That's like kick, kitten. Weird backstory to that. And then my itch.io is also the same, if people want to follow me on there, but any interesting dev stuff I'm working on, I'll probably post on Twitter.
Awesome. Noura, thank you so much. And for now, to all the listeners, salam.
Salam.